here's LeBron James after the game, and he did, on some level, give support to the coaching staff. So the coach has been great. He said, I'm not into pointing fingers. But he was asked about how Russell felt about being pulled late in the game or not being put back in the game late in the game. Here's what he had to say.
How was Russ after the game? Is that the sort of thing that bothers him?
Have you followed Russ throughout his career?
Not as closely as you have, probably.
Okay. Have you followed Russ throughout this season? Yeah. Now, would you think that would bother Russ not being in the late game?
I would imagine.
Okay. Great answer.
Can you quote me on that?
I mean, yeah, you should quote yourself. Yeah. You guys want to quote us all the time. Quote yourself.
Ric Bucher joins us, covered the NBA for years. You can see him on Speak for Yourself on Fox Sports 1 as well. Buch, what's your reaction to what's gone wrong for the Lakers?
Not a surprise. I mean, I think you alluded to it. It was to be expected. Anybody who has followed Russ Westbrook's career knows that the way Russ Westbrook is playing as a Laker is really no different than the way he played in Oklahoma City or Washington or Houston. So if you know, the question or the suggestion is that this is Russ Westbrook's fault that this hasn't worked out, I would say no. The fault is for anybody who thought that Russ Westbrook was going to be any different in a Lakers uniform than he was at any other point in his career. And it's interesting watching Stanley Johnson in a Lakers uniform as an example, or Andrew Wiggins with the Golden State Warriors, in that I'm not of the mind that guys don't change. I do believe that guys can change. The great Red Auerbach said guys don't change. I believe they can. And I think we've seen that with Wiggins, and Stanley Johnson is a perfect example. Stanley Johnson came into the league thinking that he was going to be the next LeBron James, and now he's just hoping to be the next PJ Tucker, and is willing to do whatever's necessary in order to stay in the league and continue to play. Russ Westbrook has never had to face that dilemma. He's always been allowed to be Russ because he has generated just enough, whether it's attention, wins, numbers, whatever the bar may be. He's done enough of that to continue to be allowed to play the way that he has played. So you weren't going to get a change from him simply because he was putting on a Lakers uniform. And that, to me, is at the heart of why this hasn't worked, because of all the pieces that they gave up in order to get Westbrook, and then what the anticipation was going to be. Like the definition of how Westbrook was going to play with the Lakers in order to make this work. I was like, okay, that sounds like a good definition, but why would anybody think that that's actually the way that Westbrook is going to play? And that's how it has played out.
So whose decision was it? Who said, yes, Russell Westbrook is the guy that we need to move these pieces for?
Well, ultimately that was driven by, from what I understand, it was driven by LeBron. That obviously he talked to Damian Lillard over the summer. DeMar DeRozan had a job interview. I mean, these aren't guys that met with Rob Pelinka. They're guys who met with LeBron James, and as did Russ Westbrook, met with LeBron and AD. And what I've been told, look, and this is something that's been a mystery to people around the league. Like LeBron knows the game. Like, what was it that made LeBron think that this equation was going to work? And first of all, it's a matter of options. It's not as if he could just go and get Damian Lillard, even if Damian Lillard had agreed and said, I want to be traded and I want to be traded to the Lakers. That still would have been an incredibly difficult thing to do. Russ was available. They were capable of getting him. But what he wanted was, my understanding is, like, he wanted another dog next to him. He's already playing with Anthony Davis, who doesn't have that in him. Is not that kind of guy. And he wanted that. It's why, like, for all that DeMar DeRozan is doing in Chicago, LeBron saw the DeMar DeRozan show up close, firsthand, first person, battling him in the East. DeMar DeRozan being as kind of the driving personality that he needed to get AD to play the way that he hopes AD would play, and somebody that he could count on to not be afraid in the big moments in a game. Like, Russ checked the boxes there. Did he know about the other stuff? Yeah, sure. But he thought that that element would be the thing that would ultimately win the day. And it hasn't. And it, I would say that I never expected that it would, but that was the gambit that was the reason for why the Lakers are where they are. And by the way, anybody, when I went back and watched this fourth quarter, because I'm a glutton for punishment, I watched the fourth quarter of the Pacers twice. And the idea that Russ was the only defensive liability out there. I mean, LeBron James was scored 30 points and was a team-leading minus 20 for the game. Austin Reeves played nearly the entire fourth quarter and did not take a single shot. And I wouldn't have him out there for his offensive prowess.
He's not Michael Cooper, right?
The number of guys out there that were, I mean, first of all, their help defense is non-existent. The next time you see a guy rotate over to help on somebody who's been beat will be the first time well, I mean, I guess you saw some of it with Utah, but Utah was fairly easy, and Utah thought that they could still win that game simply by the threes have to start falling for us at some point. The Utah game's an outlier. But for the most part, this team is so indifferent in helping each other, or maybe it's simply the ability of being able to help each other defensively, that to point to any one person and say they're the reason for the defensive breakdown is laughable to me.
No, you're right. You're actually being incredibly fair. Which brings me to there's a couple things. First, I blame LeBron for Westbrook, but I blame Pelinka for Caruso, and I think that and I think Caruso's a guy. He's not a magician, but of all the things that they're missing, that's what they're missing, right? A guy who defends, who has no ego as far as shooting, who everybody likes, who's kind of come up, kind of a mailroom sort of guy, was going to take less to come back. That was a massive miscalculation. They lost Caruso. They lost all of their kind of the mojo. And I think that the reason he pulled Russell, it was kind of personal, right? It was you're killing us at the offensive end. You're not doing one at the defensive end. But also, like, there's just a negative energy there that is undeniable. And he may be just in his own head about his own game and frustrated. It doesn't matter. When you're Russell Westbrook, the team feeds off of that. It did feel very personal, like you said. He could have taken anybody out, and Russell Westbrook was the guy he took out.
Yeah, no, certainly that's fair. What I don't know, and this is a dynamic that's always there and is there for every head coach that people don't, like, the social media geniuses out there who are like, oh, Frank's rotation, it's, he's not playing Dwight Howard. There is no coach in the league that unilaterally plays the guys that they want to play or uses the rotation. That is all informed by and decisions made in conjunction with the front office. And in the case of Frank Vogel in particular right now, as has been revealed, Kurt Rambis is in the coaches meeting. Now, that generally doesn't happen on a regular basis with all teams. Coaches will talk about, hey, this is what I'm thinking of doing with the rotation. This is who I'm thinking of playing. All of that is vetted, not only with the GM, but generally with the best players on the team. If there's something significant that is going to change, as far as rotations certainly going into a game. So there is that, and that's the part that I don't know is how much of this is being informed, or the decision on Westbrook was, I'm being told, like, hey, sit him the bleep down or it was, no, you still gotta play him. And Frank got to a point where he's like, screw it. My butt is on the line. I'm going to do what I need to do to try to win the game.
That's what it feels like. Kind of quickly here, Buke. We got to run.
Yep.
Once you talk about firing a coach, and you got Chris Haynes reporting no personnel moves for now,
right? Right.
He's not dead
right
yet.
Now.
It's like when Joe Paterno died. Like, no, he's not dead, but he's like they've called the priest. Like, it's going to happen at some point soon.
Yeah.
Who replaces him?
Yeah. I mean, I honestly don't know. David Fizdale got a little trial run while Frank was out with COVID, and that did not go well. And I don't see a way in which Fizz has the personality to drive this team where it needs to go. I mean, it's I don't know that anybody can coach it. Kurt Rambis has coached. Kurt Rambis obviously has a lot of thoughts about how this team should play. Would he possibly go that direction? He
wanted to play two big guys. He wants to play DeAndre Jordan and Dwight Howard.
I'm not saying I would do it if I'm Jeannie Buss, and if I was Kurt Rambis, I wouldn't do it because I think he's got a pretty cush situation here right now. I'm just saying, like, alternatives. I'm looking at the bench. I don't see an answer. And I don't see somebody out there. And this again, in the composition of the team, this was my problem from the very beginning. Like, you're asking who has a personality and a track record among any coaches potentially available out there that can tell Anthony Davis, Carmelo Anthony, Russ Westbrook, LeBron James, am I missing anybody? 4 or 5 guys, Dwight Howard, 4 or 5 guys that either are on the all-time 75 list or think they should be. This is how we're going to play. This is how you guys need to collectively play. This is what you need. These are the sacrifices you need to make in order for us to win. I don't know that guy exists. And so to think that there's a coaching change that is going to solve the Lakers' problems is somewhat of a fantasy.
Ric Bucher. Check him out on Speak for Yourself. Follow him on social media. He's great. Buke, you're the best. Appreciate you joining us.